Welcome along to Crunching Gears, Season 1, Episode 7, Part 3. My final conversation with Andrew Nesbitt, and in this episode we looked at Andrew's career from 2003 until 2007. We look at going to Sweden to do the WRC, the famous victory in Donegal in 2006 in the Mitsubishi WRC, and much more besides.
I think, I've been out watching stages yesterday and again this morning, and, Andrew has got the very best technology, there's no doubt about that. Fair play to the guy, he's also making the very best use of it. He's driving the car in the middle of the road, and there's just no way these guys are going to stay in touch with him.
Well, the rally's only half over, as you know, and for me it's very hard to keep the concentration. I think the only thing is to continue maximum attack.
So we're not going to see a half effort, we're going to see a full effort.
Yeah, absolutely.
Loose hairpin left 26, cold tyres, muddy hairpin right 24 times over crested fence. Right side sharp left 24 times and wins, right 24 tightens. Sharp left 24 tightens and wins, right 24 tightens enter. Remember barrage stop hairpins, right 26 left 26 tightens. Repeat, remember down here, remember, hairpins, right 26 left 26 tightens, mind the left.
Amazing evening, I think, for both James and I. There's some of those jumps out there, we were actually taking them sideways, left foot brake, and doing all the stuff that we were doing at the rally school, and it was a great feeling to be here.
Now, Andrew mentioned the fact that you did the rally school in Norway with all the snow, and all the snow came today. What's the feeling like sitting beside him on those last 6 stages with the snow on the ground?
Well, normally we try to keep the car in a straight line, but looking out the side windows was a big change for me.
Was today the day that you really enjoyed of the whole three?
Absolutely, because as the days went on, there was more snow and the grip was better for us and we were more sideways, and that's what we wanted to do, and it was a fantastic feeling.
Andrew, you're welcome along once again.
Thank you very much, Kevin. It's great to be speaking to you one more time. Down in Donegal here at Port Blasio, just up from the beach a little bit, and the sun's shining, so you couldn't be in a better place today.
Well, that sounds perfect to me. The last time we finished up at the end of 2002, so we're going into 2003. Is it fair to say you took a wee bit of a step back from rallying then in 2003? You only competed in, what was it, about 4 events?
Yeah, at that time, after the 2 international wins, the championship wins, it got to a point that I only decided to do selected events because my sponsors only wanted to do the events that they wanted to do. And, it wasn't about winning championships; it was always about winning the rally outright. And for me, that's what I focused on then, and obviously business as well. But in all of those years, we still competed across the British Isles. We went to Scotland, and as you know, we did the Jim Clark 3 years in a row. We also came to Donegal and a few other events around the island. And but yes, it was a very selected program at that stage. Yeah,
and you had great years in the Jim Clark Rally. You won it 3 years in a row. Is it fair to say that their roads would be different characteristics from Irish roads as well?
Their roads are unbelievably fast, but increasingly dangerous when the rain came in. Whatever was about the quality of the mud that came onto the roads from the side of the roads when it rained, it became a skating ring. And you can see from footage over the years, many a driver got caught out trying to leave his braking where he would normally leave it late, coming into a corner or coming down to a junction, and they would go straight off the road. And as you can see from the footage that's out there from RPM, that there was a lot of damage done over those 3 year periods. However, it was great to go and race the British champions because that's who we want to beat at the time. And I remember back in the day, saying, right, we'll take them on now because we felt we were ready for them, and we did. And then I went back to defend my title. After the first win in 2002, we went back in 2003, defended the title again, and lo and behold, we won it. So it was a very lucky event for James O'Brien and I, particularly down through the stages. There was a water break through a river, and those stages you had to be very careful. And as I said earlier, especially when it rained, But the one big part of the Jim Clark Rally that stands out for me is there was a jump that you had to take it. Well, for us, we were taking it high speed, and we called it the ski jump. And if you could get your car lined up properly on it, there was a tree in the distance, maybe 1.5 miles away beyond the jump, but it was the only marker I had coming up to the crest of the hill, and we had it lined up perfectly. And I remember the first time we took off on that ski jump, I think we went for 150 to 160 feet before we landed. So it was really like an aircraft coming into land, and the whole car, you could feel the vibration through the steering and the wings. The whole car was getting the air underneath it, and it would land really smoothly. But by the way, we were taking off at 130 mile an hour. and I remember my boys and Linda and a few spectators being away down the hill where they thought was a really safe place to be. And we went straight over the top of their head. And, it was only afterwards when we seen the photographs that we were so high. We must have been 15, 16 foot in the air. And we perfected that, and we continued to perfect it. And every year everyone went to see the ski jump. And you couldn't get any higher or faster because we were practically on the limiter coming to it from the junction that was maybe a half a mile back, but it was straight to it, and the jump was taken in at approximately 130 mile an hour every time. And so it was precision engineering, because if you were 6 inches out with your line, you were off that road and you would have rolled for 1.5 miles. It was one of those amazing features of that Scottish rally. It was fantastic. But coming back to the roads, as I said earlier, there was many a car, many a world champion took on that race and finished up hitting walls or hitting the scenery at a serious rate of knots. And we were very fortunate that we got through it. But we learned our lesson very early. I remember Chris Paterson was sitting with someone, and he says, "Andrew, we're just after doing the recce through that stage," and he says, "I'm telling you now, do not drive any faster than 30 mile an hour. You will not get stopped." Right. And I'm going, okay, well, that was my first time there, and I went down to this junction, and could I get stopped? It was impossible. Right. Fortunately, it was an open T junction, and I shot straight through it, only at 30 mile an hour. Yes. But it taught us manners. It taught us to watch the conditions of the Jim Clark Rally, and anyone whoever thought could take it on at speed in those conditions were always going to finish up off the road and doing damage.
And then, like, at home, then like this is cut back in your times, but you went on to claim another Donegal 1 then in 2003, and that was in the ex Richard Burns World Championship winning car as well. That was a nice thing to have as well.
That was a great car, and thanks to Kenny McKinstry and the McKinstry Motorsport team, they produced a great car for me that year. It was very fast. It was the latest at the time. And, every time we came to Donegal over the years, we always came with something a little bit faster than the previous time. And that ex-Richard Burns car was just unbelievable. And for Donegal, someone was asking me the other day here, what's the difference in the R5 cars in Donegal and the World Rally cars, Andrew? And I'm going, well, guys, it's very simple for me. The faster the stages and the more open they are and the bumpier they are, you need a long wheelbase car. And the Subaru and the Mitsubishi give you that, and the Fords. But the R5s now are smaller. Now they're more nimble around the likes of Atlantic Drive. And would probably win Atlantic Drive every time. But on the open fast stages of Knockalla and High Glen and Low Glen combined, they're a very hard car to beat. It's the World Rally car. And yeah, it was a real pleasure to drive that over those stages.
I suppose we can't really go on and beyond. We'll have to look back in Donegal 2004. Like you were on a ding-dong battle with Eugene through the Friday and the Saturday, and then on Saturday afternoon the rain came in and you got the foot down. And was it Knockalla? You took 23 seconds or something. You're 23 seconds behind Eugene. I know you're going into Saturday afternoon, and you come out 35 seconds ahead. Like, that was some performance. Was that
Well,
was that 100% driving?
That was on the limit. That was definitely on the limit. And well, as I said to you in the previous episodes, I always try to stay below the 100%. But certainly when you're fit to catch the likes of Eugene Donnelly on the stage, and you said 23 seconds, I think if the true time had been told, it was closer to 27, 28 seconds.
Right.
Why do I say that? The timekeeper didn't see my car behind Eugene coming into the time control. He just seen one car and then realized
there's another one there.
Here's another car.
Yes.
But the true time that James had in his watch at that time, we were literally only 2 to 3 seconds off his bumper.
Right.
But it was a nice. It was nice to do it.
Yes. And we all know what happened on the Sunday. Like, there's no point really rehashing that. It was just one of them unfortunate things, wasn't it? So.
Well, look, I wouldn't worry too much about the Sunday. What actually happened was I spun the car at 15 mile an hour on the slicks. We'd been sitting at the start line for some time. I spun the car and I tried to reverse down the stage and couldn't manage it. So tried the handbrake turn and got stuck basically on a little rut on the side of the road with the sump guard. The rest is history.
Yeah.
We actually had time. We had time to let Eugene past and Derek. If we could have let them past, we could still have won that rally. Anyway, that's history and that's rallying, and someone has to win. And unfortunately, that day, Andrew Nesbitt and the Cuisine de France team didn't win.
Wait, there's no. Just looking at your results here, a bit of a strange one there. You went away to Sweden to do the World Championship event. What was the thinking behind that?
Well, the thinking behind that was very simple. I had decided that I was going to probably retire within the next 12 months from rallying. And I felt that if we could get our sponsors together that had supported us over the years, Philip White Tires, Cuisine de France, Subaru Ireland, Pirelli, all of these guys, that we would take all our team to Sweden. But there's a few funny stories around Sweden. What actually happened was we got the sponsorship gathered up. We met with the Cuisine de France directors in Dublin. They said, yes, Andrew, it's a great idea and we will support you. But more importantly, it was to thank all my teammates for everything they had done for me over the years, to take them away to a world rally. What better one to take them away to than a Swedish snow rally? We'd never seen the snow before in a rally car. But so we come up with a very good plan that we would head to Norway first, actually, and we go to the John Hockland rally school, which was way up in the mountains. And my goodness, it was snow everywhere. Like, you weren't short of snow. It was 3-4 foot of snow everywhere. But we went to his ice. He had a big lake, and there was a rally track set out on it every winter. And we went there and we tested and tested. And that whole testing was for the Swedish World Rally, purely to get me to understand how to slide the car, how to set the car up, because it was completely different to what you would do in tarmac. And you talk about the Swedish throws of the rally car. We were doing all of this. And so we got all our teammates gathered up, and right enough, John Kenny from RTE, he came along as well. We had Niall Maguire. We had so many people, so many rally supporters from Ireland appeared to the stages in Sweden. But it was a thank you from myself and all the sponsors for all the support that I had been given over the previous 10 years of international sport at that point.
Yes.
Because there were a fantastic period of, I think we had probably 15 international wins at that point, plus the Jim Clark rallies. So it was tallying up nicely for me, but this was the one I was going to go to and give it a lash, as the saying goes. We got gathered up anyway. And I remember flying from Dublin to Norway, to Oslo, and we had to drive for, I think, 2.5, 3 hours up into the mountains. And I was in the back of Kenny McKinstry's Jeep along with the teammates. His lorry had left Ireland 2 weeks earlier, but had was traveling up through the mountains in Norway to the hotel we were staying in. And I remember Kenny getting the phone call saying, oh, there's something wrong. What was wrong was I was sort of half sleeping in the back of the Jeep. So Sam had rang to say, Kenny, we have lost the rally car.
Right.
And he says, you've lost what? I overheard this. And what happened was the temperature was so cold that night that the tow bar broke. It cracked the weld in the tow bar. The car proceeded to leave the lorry and disappear over a snowbank and away down into a field. Fortunately, hit nothing. But the guys didn't know it wasn't on the back of the lorry until they got to the hotel when they jumped out to reverse the lorry back into the space. Car was gone. So I think it took them 4 or 5 hours up and down that road to try and find a hole where in the hedge, which was covered in snow anyway.
Yes.
And they eventually found the rally car on its side in the rally shuttle, the trailer that the car was in.
Yes.
Sideways. And the only damage was done at that time that we could see was there was a half shaft bent, and a couple of rims had to be changed just with the side the impact, and that was it. So we went and tested the rally car anyway, and everything was going great until we then decided, okay, we're going to the Swedish World Rally. Rally time, you do your tests, and the car was working perfectly. And unfortunately, we were going to after the test, we were going to the first stage, and I put the boost on, and the next thing the turbo pipe blew off the exchanger. And it was the only thing that, you could never have picked it up.
No.
Because when we were testing, it was perfect.
Yeah.
When we were rallying on the lake, it was perfect. But rally in Sweden, and no rally car. It went missing. It was, what could you do? Only laugh at it, but it wasn't a laughing matter at the time. For a world rally car that was probably worth £300,000 at the time, gone missing.
Yes.
There it was, gone.
Yes.
But anyway, once we got the turbo fixed, we had to drive one of the longest stages with this turbo pipe off, and once we got that repaired, we were good to go. And then we started competing really well as a privateer. At that time, it was, you had all the World Rally team, and then you had the privateers coming alongside them, and it was fantastic. One of those stages was 52 kilometers long. I'd never seen a stage 52 kilometers long. It was all snow.
Yes.
And left foot braking, and it was a great experience. James and I both loved that. And more importantly, it was great for all the people that had supported me over the years that followed us out. And it was really a party for them.
Yes.
And believe me, it turned into one. I remember coming up onto the finish ramp, and they were wagging us through, and I said, James, get out of the car. We're going to get onto the bonnet because the photographs are going to reveal that we nearly won this rally. Anyone that's seen the photographs from Sweden would have thought we won that rally.
You're celebrating style.
Yeah, fantastic memories.
So now we must just take a wee quick trip back. Like you were telling us, in the first episode about your arm and all. Was your arm fully healed at this stage? And did you ever return to see doctors?
Well, that's a very good question, Kevin. Yes, my arm was fully healed at that time, and through the whole program from the accident to that point in time, I always had to have a lot of training and physio on it. And fortunately, Linda was a physio through all those years, and I had the right mechanics to get it all sorted out. But yes, I actually went back to see the surgeon after the Swedish World Rally. There was a book produced, and within that book there was many rallies that I had won over the years. And I was coming from Coleraine one of the days, and I had a book in the car, and I said, you know what, I'm going to stop at Ballykelly here to see if Sean Simpson's in. And he was the guy, he was the specialist that worked my injury at the time. And I walked up anyway, and the lady question said, yes, he's in surgery, but he's going to be out in about 5 minutes. So I sat down anyway, and I had this book signed. And within the book, I said, dear Sean, without you, this book would never have been possible. And what that meant was, and I didn't realize it until that day, how bad things were actually, all those years later. He came out anyway of his theatre, and he was gowned up, and he was walking along, and he seen me, and he goes, Andrew, what are you doing here? And I'm going, I'm here to see you. He says, right. Are you all right? I said, I'm fine. Yeah, I have something for you. So he says, come into my office here. And within the office was the senior nurse that was in charge, plus 3 or 4 other people, and 1 or 2 doctors. And he brought me in and introduced me to everyone. He says, this is Andrew Nesbitt, the rally driver. And this is my injury, he says. This is the arm I was telling you all about. And he started showing my injury to them. And I said, Sean, here's a book for you, a little present. And I just thought you would like to see it, because after that time in '96, when I won my first international, I actually won a 4th or 15th. And include the Jim Clark rallies. Now, you can tally them all up because we still have to get to 2006. And he opened the book, and he read the little message that I had put inside the book. And he started to cry.
Right.
And I'm going, Sean, are you okay? Why are you crying? And he turned round to the nurse in charge, and he said to her, do you remember I told you what I was going to do? This arm. She says, I do. And it was only then that I ever knew when he asked me, before I went to surgery, Andrew, is there anything you want to ask me? And I said, yes. How quickly will it be before I can race again? And at that point, his next conversation with me was going to be that he was going to amputate my arm. And he told the story in front of everyone. And it was only then that I realized that his next message to me at that time in '96 was he was going to have to amputate my arm. But when I said to him, when again, he said, that's down to you. And the two in his office crying.
Yes.
Because I never knew that's what he had in his head.
Right.
The book, and he'd seen all the wins that we had achieved. I said, Sean, it was never possible without you. Not.
Yes.
He says, well, you've no idea how pleased I am that you've had so much good luck in your motorsport. After that injury has been talked about in every theatre throughout the world, of the seriousness of it. And the most important message out of it all was to give it, always give it the last chance. And that was it.
Isn't that?
It was
quite
told. It winded me.
I'll tell you, it's definitely took one day at my sails too. Here you talk about it there, So, that one sentence from you just changed the whole outlook of what he was going to do that day.
Absolutely. It was milliseconds away from being the wrong decision for me.
Only you had said that when we were going to race again, that just made such a difference.
That's it.
And whatever obviously he done that day was life changing for you, and he obviously got the benefit of it as well. If it was something that he was able to tell other people about that made such a difference to you, and that experience has maybe helped other people along the way too?
Yeah, well, he told me afterwards it was a compound fracture of the ulnar nerve, and the ulnar nerve was really badly damaged. And he told me that he had given lectures, as far away as New York, Boston, Australia, all over the place on that injury. I went through the whole detail of it.
Yes.
And it was obviously very important to him that he was fit to lecture on it around the world.
Yes.
But I can tell you, it wounded me when I heard what he was going to do.
Yeah.
So eternally grateful to him, to Sean Simpson and his team back in the hospital. It was just unreal.
Yeah, definitely. So I suppose we should look now at happier times.
Sorry, that was out in the Galvin that I had to go.
All right, sorry, yes. I suppose now we should look at happier times then. You talked about retirement at 2005, but you were tempted to come back to Donegal one more time, the chance to drive a Mitsubishi World Rally car. What was the story behind that one?
Oh my goodness, there's some story behind that. Well, I'll give you the shortened version of it because it would last a whole hour if I was to stay at it. This guy appeared out of nowhere and he said to me, Andrew, I'm setting up a World Rally team and I'm going to call it the Mitsubishi World Rally Team because Mitsubishi are now stepping down out of World Rally Motorsport. But I can get 2 cars organised for Donegal and I can get you a sponsorship package, and Mark Higgins is going to take 1 car and I would like you to consider taking the second one. And I'm going, oh, this is just unbelievable. Is this really happening to me? Well, it didn't really happen to me because he disappeared. It was a whole Walter Mitty story.
Right.
But it took such good legs. I got to know John Easton in Mitsubishi at the time, who was in charge of the team. And I said, John, well, look, this guy has disappeared. He hasn't come up with any money, no sponsorship, but I will organise my end of it if Mark Higgins and Rory can organise their end. So they worked hard to get it, but at that time, John said, there's only going to be one chance here, Andrew. There's 2 rally cars coming to Ireland or none.
Right.
Even though I wanted to come. So I had to pay the deposit for both cars.
Right.
And they came. And, that was me getting back into a rally car. I hadn't been in a car for a long time.
Yes.
Mark, he's obviously a very talented driver over the years. He and I'd raced each other a few times. But I really wanted to have a go because we were representing, the Irish title and he was representing the British title. And I thought, let's have a go. So we managed to get both cars to Ireland. And it was very unusual because the 2 cars were identical. But the only thing that wasn't identical was the setup of the car.
Okay. That was tailored to your own individual needs.
Tailored to it was, but the 2 cars arrived anyway. But my car arrived first, and for whatever reason, Mark, he got to test my car, and tested he did. He was up and down that road as hard as he could go. In one of the stages that had been closed off at the time in Donegal here, he was to test until 12 o'clock. And at 3 o'clock, he was still testing, but it was my car. And I remember saying to him, I said, you know what? I have to get in. I have to get in and do a bit of testing because we're going to run out of time here.
Yes.
And he says, no. He says, you can test my car when it arrives. That was never going to be any good to me.
Yeah.
So he'd been able to test from 9 o'clock to 3 o'clock, which was 6 hours, and no breaks. And I'm standing on the side of the road watching him. So I said to James O'Brien, I said, look, we better make a call here to John Easton. John proceeded to tell Mark that I had paid the deposit for both cars and that it was my time to test. So he stepped down and I stepped into the car, which was the best thing ever because the engineer that was in the car with me had spent the previous 6 hours with
Mark in the car.
Mark testing. And I up and down the road a few times, and I'll always take my time to get up to 85%.
Mm-hmm.
And lo and behold, I hit this kick up at the back of Glenveigh Castle. And I swear to you, I went up about 12 foot in the air in the back of it. And she bounced, she came down and she bounced and she buck-leapt a few times. And I'm saying to myself, if that's his settings, they're never going to work in Donegal.
Right.
And the engineer that was with me, I said to him, you've got to promise me I'm going to set this car up to my settings, but no one gets them.
Yeah.
And that was what happened. So I eventually tested that car for probably 3 hours, maybe 4 at the most. And that was it. I'd never seen the car before. And we got the car really well set up. But my goodness, what a wonderful car. Especially the team that was there from Rally Art. They were so professional. Like, I remember them coming with these lorries, but each man, there was 3 computers in every car, each car.
Yes.
There was a computer for the engine, there was a computer for the gearbox and back diff, and a computer for the suspension setup.
Right.
And they had been trying to get that suspension working for a long time. And we managed to get it set up. And they seen this. I remember Kieran Larkin saying that the engineer had said to him he had never seen suspension work so hard ever in any rally. And that's what's different about the roads in Ireland, particularly Donegal. They are so testing and so demanding. And we tested, and at the end of it, I was so happy with the car, and I got it up to about 95% of what I felt should be at. And the next day, Mark and I proceeded to take it into each other. History will tell you that we were setting times that hadn't been seen ever in Donegal.
No,
both of us.
Yes.
But I remember saying to James O'Brien, there's a couple of kicks in at the back of Creaslock here, and if he hasn't got his settings set to the ones I have in the car, he's most likely to get kicked off the road. Now, in fairness to him, he only lost, I think, 35, 40 seconds at the time.
Right, yes.
But that gave us a lead of 35, 40 seconds. And we had to maintain that for the rest of the Donegal International Rally. And I can tell you, Mark and Rory, they put it to me, it was hard going. And the harder they went, the harder I had to go to keep them behind. So that was a rally then. I had to lead from the front at that point.
Yes.
But the car was just amazing. And to have the opportunity of a World Rally car with a World Rally team, it was something that I could only ever have dreamt of.
Yeah, and your favourite rally as well too.
And my favourite rally on stages that I had competed on, you know, for so many different years at different speeds, with different cars, as you know. And look at that was the icing on the cake. James O'Brien and I were speaking about it recently, and I said, James, which was the best rally that you ever competed in? And he says, well, it has to be in the Mitsubishi in Donegal.
Yes.
You know, we always loved all of the rallies, but that one was so special to us. I have to say to you, James had his work cut out for him that day. Unfortunately, the RPM, the in-car speaker, wasn't working. Okay, yes. Satisfactory, because there would have been a lot of good footage there for the history books.
The decibel levels would be through the roof with James.
They were definitely at the higher end of octave. Yeah, they were good.
I suppose we should take a minute or two now to speak about James, like how influential he was on your career.
Well, going way back to after '96, you know, '97, when I got going again after the injury, you know, and lo and behold, many years later, I was being told that Sean was going to have to amputate my arm. There was a whole learning process, a healing process, and an adjustment program of how you would drive, how you would compete. And if you want to win, you have to be so professional at it. And, it was Brian Murphy that actually said, Andrew, there's only one man I can think of that could sit with you at that pace, is James O'Brien, but why don't you ring him up and ask him? So I contacted James at the end of 96, coming into 97, and he agreed he would sit on with me. But as you know from previous conversations, I had to go at his pace, and I did. But I can easily say to you that I would never have won any of those internationals without James. He was so understanding. The notes that I had were obviously different to most people's, but he understood what I was trying to do, and he understood the feeling I had for the cars that I was driving, and was always very sensitive around all of that. Look, James has sat with more rally drivers than anyone else in the world. His record, so the knowledge he had at that point in time was huge, and it was all about getting me to drive at a pace that wasn't over the top. And if we could get it back to 95, 98%, most of the time we were leading the rallies. And all we had to do was finish them. Well, history tells you we won quite a few as a result of that, and that's largely down to James. And through the support of his family, it was fantastic.
And you mentioned family there. Like, family obviously is a very important part, for yourself and James. Like, your two boys and your wife, you talk about them as well. They went to a lot of the events with you as well. And Graham and Matthew were. Did they ever get into the sport?
Oh, they did actually. So way back in when Graham was 14, he decided he wanted to do the Ford Rally Challenge, and Matthew was coming behind 3 years later, and he got into Rallycross. So they both had it. They all had the need for speed as well in the Nesbitt household. And so back in 2004, 2006, Graham, he did the Pirelli Trophy Rally. And who did I get to sit alongside? So only James O'Brien. And unfortunately, they were going really well. Unfortunately, they had a little bit of a mishap in Kielder Forest, and they finished up on the roof. But these things happen. And then Matthew, he took up the rally in the British and Irish Rallycross back in 2005 and 2007. So both Matthew and Graham, they'd done Rallycross meetings, and then Graham went into the bigger league when he took on the Pirelli Trophy Rally. But they were both very good drivers. Unfortunately, Graham, he finished up with that accident with James on his roof. And then the time I went to Cork, the last time I drove the Mitsubishi rally car actually was down in Cork. Matthew was competing in Mondello at the same time in the Irish Rally Championship. And I crashed in Cork and he crashed in Mondello. He finished up in hospital in Dublin and I finished up in hospital in Cork. So we always agreed after that we would never, there'd only ever be one of us rallying at the one time, because you cannot be in two places at the one time. Especially if you're competing in motorsport, you never know what's going to happen. But yes, both Graham and Matthew are very talented. But then, as you know, they had to get university and university results, and that was more important than driving at the time. And they did that, but they're now voicing, both Graham and Matthew, that they want to get back into the sport. So let's see how we get out over this pandemic in the next 12 months.
Watch this space then. So, like, 2007, Citroen come to Donegal for testing for Rally Ireland. Was that nice to see this, World Rally Championship team coming to your favourite event to compete in? Did it make you want to go back again one last time to Donegal?
Absolutely, and the thing was, I was saying to young Loeb at the time, you know, your suspension's not right in that car. And he was going, what's wrong with it? You know, I said, well, you're not setting the times you should be, because your whole suspension setup's wrong. And I said to him, if he was to change the springs from his usual tarmac spring to a forest spring, he would most likely start leading the rally, and he did. And not only did he lead the rally, he won the rally. And that was purely through lack of knowledge on his part, never having tested in Ireland before.
Yes.
So, yeah, it was great to see the World Rally cars coming to Ireland. It was great to see the World Rally teams. And I'm hoping it's going to happen again. I know Bobby Willis is working very hard at this point in time to bring the World Rally back onto the Isle of Ireland.
Yeah, brilliant. Won't it? Fingers crossed that will come together. 2007, I also saw you taking a wee bit of a change of direction. You went rallycrossing, and you've competed in rounds of the European Rallycross, a Tour Eklund Saab. That must have been some exhilaration.
Well, you know, it was George Tracy that got me into that. He had been doing a lot of rallycross meetings with Ollie O'Donovan and a few guys. And at that time, he says, Andrew, you should get one of these cars. I said, well, I don't have access to a car at the moment. He says, well, we can get one rented for you. And it was the Saab came, as you quite rightly say. It came to Ireland first of all, and then we went to England and on into Europe. And to sit on the start line with 700 brake horsepower under the bonnet and maybe 7 or 10 cars around you is some drill, I can tell you. Your heart is beating at a rate of knots you'd never feel in anything else. It was frightening, actually. But once you got to know how it worked, Rallycross is so different. Everyone wants to put you off the road. And they had, when you look at those world rounds right now, it's who can get to the front first. And if you don't get to the front first, you're likely to cause damage anywhere from second back.
Right.
And there's only one place to be in Rallycross meetings, and that's the head of the field.
Yes. So you talked then about Loeb and all limping over. Rally Ireland in 2007, you were taking part in it. And then for 2009, another change of career again, a TV pundit for RTE. Graham recently messaged me he had sent you like a cheat sheet, as I suppose it could be described as. This sort of become the Bible for all the guys in RTE. That must have been some coup for Graham to be involved in the likes of that as well. And did you enjoy the experience?
I did enjoy the experience because normally it was John Kenny or some of these guys that were doing the interviewing, but on this particular occasion, they had contacted me to see if I would take on the role. And they didn't really have the detail on offer that they needed to have to commentate, because it was going worldwide. Not only was it RTE doing the commentating and recording of the events, but all of that information was going worldwide. So Graham, he got to do a lot of work in the background and created what we call the Motorsport Bible of how we were to guide our way through the whole interviewing process with Michael Lester at the time. It was fantastic. And a great experience for Graham as well.
Yes. That was fantastic, wasn't it? You were going out there live every night then, yourself and Eugene, and discussing all that happened throughout the day. It's nice to do something so completely different.
Well, that was completely different, but when I was there commentating, I'd preferred to be driving, to be honest with you.
Yes. You mentioned Eugene Donnelly there a couple of times, like Eugene, Austin McHale, Gareth McHale, Derek McGarty, the list goes on. Like from sort of 2003 up to 2007, there was some fabulous competition there in the stages. That was a real golden era of Irish rallying at that time, wasn't it?
Yeah. Plum Tyndall called with me the other day here, and we were just saying that from 1996 to 2006, there was a 10-year window of motorsport in Ireland that had never been seen before and has never been seen since.
Yes.
It just was brought to another level, and I think at one time we had 42 World Rally cars in Ireland.
Mm-hmm.
It was just outstanding. We had more World Rally cars in Ireland than any other country in the whole world. And we had the drivers to drive them.
Mm-hmm.
We had a fantastic list of drivers competing. And for ourselves particularly, to take on other World Rally drivers who came to Ireland, it was a great opportunity for us.
Mm-hmm.
And I do hope we get to see a World Rally round again back in Ireland, hopefully very soon.
You know, like it would be fabulous to see them up the lakes around Torhead or Hamilton's Folly or something like that. It would just be mind-blowing, isn't it? Especially these current cars now. It would just be an unbelievable experience.
It would be an unbelievable experience, but it would be an amazing experience for the country, because
Yes.
it would bring millions and millions of pounds to the economy,
Mm-hmm.
which is going to be needed in the next 12 months.
Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah.
To see us, it would really help us through this pandemic,
Mm-hmm.
and hopefully that will happen.
You had some very loyal sponsors along the way. Cuisine de France, Philip White Tires, Cross Refrigeration, and all. Like, you know, obviously them guys played a very important role in your rallying career.
Well, you've mentioned most of them there, but you know, without my own colleagues in Cross Refrigeration at the time, they gave me 100% support. Jim Keating, he was the managing director at the time, and Dermot Walsh, who was the sales director. Those two guys gave me 150% support to compete at the highest level. And that was the start of my rallying career, really being able to afford the time out through the business, and two, financial support to make it all happen. And then on the back of that, I had Cuisine de France come in for 7 years,
Mm-hmm.
which was fantastic. Out of those, what we call the golden 10 years,
Mm-hmm.
between 96 and 2006. And Philip White Tires, Philip had sponsored me on every rally I ever competed on since I was 18 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And I was only speaking to him last week, and we were just reminding each other about the number of years that he had been supporting me in rally cars. And I think it was 30 odd years.
Mm-hmm.
It's a long time.
That's
And a great loyal supporter.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, you mentioned there, I had great support from Subaru Ireland.
Yeah.
And
Pirelli as well too.
Pirelli,
Mm-hmm.
all of those guys, Pirelli, Subaru Ireland,
Mm-hmm.
and along the way there were other people like Tony Kelly
Mhm.
in Letterkenny. He sponsored me, and Voodoo sponsored me.
Yeah.
I also had the likes of ADL Tiles in Armagh,
Oh, yeah.
Rutledge Recruitment. Over the years, the list was endless,
Mm-hmm.
and I thank them all dearly for what they did for me. It
Yeah.
kept the wheels turning.
Yes. And we all know how cruel sport rallying can be. Like, you built up a great friendship with Manus Kelly before his unfortunate accident in Donegal 2019. Like, I think you've seen a lot of yourself and Manus, that the kind of the family man, the love of Donegal, you know, the kind of go hard or go home attitude. Wasn't there a lot of that there?
Well, I think it was different for Manus in that he was so talented.
Mm-hmm.
He won the Donegal International Rally 3 years in a row, and he was very calm and collected about what he was doing. And from my point of view, unbelievable,
Yeah.
an unbelievable driver, and as you quite rightly say, a great family man. And
Mm-hmm.
he had great support from everyone in Donegal.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
you know, it was very sad. It was very sad for motorsport in Ireland what happened.
Yeah, and like you were very good with his family then. The tail end of last year, you got a chance to get behind the wheel of a rally car again for Deja Vu Donegal, but it was also turned into a day of celebrating Manus, and like you helped out his family tremendous that day. I would say they will be forever grateful for that support that day too.
Well, look, that could never have taken place without the help of Enda Garvey,
Mm-hmm.
who happened to have the S12B World Rally car. And he says, Andrew, if you're going to do it, you have to do it right. And we deckled the car all up
Mm-hmm.
to look at as if it was one of my older cars. And that was a day of celebration of motorsport in Ireland, but
Mm-hmm.
also to celebrate Manus.
Yeah.
Manus's wins and his success, and at the same time, like, he was going for Council here in Donegal, and you know, he was going to the top. And unfortunately, one of these things, it was just a sad accident.
Yeah,
that's what it was.
that's for sure. How did it feel to be back behind the wheel of a rally car again? Did it put any ideas into your head?
Well, do you know what? It was more the smell of the fuel. While we were doing the déjà vu and we were only driving around the roads, I think the fuel was about £1,000 for 100 miles. It's crazy. I must say now, when you sit in a full works World Rally car, there's something very special about it.
Yes.
It is so special. The smells of the car, the engine, the power, you know, it's all there. And when we were going up through High Glen and Low Glen, and we stopped at the pub there, and then we went round Atlantic Drive and did all of those stages purely at road speed. But, you know, I was just thinking, would I not love to have the helmet on here going flat? You know, it was very tempting.
Yes.
It was extremely tempting to get behind a World Rally car again. But you know what? I have to be thankful. I have to be thankful for the successes I've had over the years with my different navigators. You know, all the national rounds that I won, Brian Murphy guided me through all of those. Then James O'Brien guided me through most of the international wins. And way back at the very start, the late Trevor Henry and Stephen Bassett, he navigated for me in one or two events as well. All of those guys were part of my history and all of the success I had. So I have to thank them all for that.
Yeah.
But you know, there's other people I must thank here, and that is my family.
Of course,
and Linda and Matthew and Graham and my sister, my brother, Caroline and Alan, my late mum and dad, Bella and Albert. All of those people supported me for 30 years at this sport. And I had to, you know, then all my staff back in Cross Refrigeration, I have to thank them as well, particularly Jacqueline McKittrick, who did all the paperwork and the precision of all of that.
Yes.
And all of the management team that looked after me. No one believes this, but we had 25 people on a rally team.
Right.
When we were at the top of our game. And that's a lot of people looking after one person.
Yes.
Between weather notes, tyres, you know, Neville Matthews, he's down in Australia, Stephen Dolan. All of these guys were a great influence and a great help to me over the years. So I have to say a big thank you to everyone. There's so many, I can't thank them all. I know I'd miss them. I'm going to leave some people out. But particularly my family and my business and all my colleagues for supporting me over the years. And once again, a big thank you to every one of them.
Yes, no problem at all. And I suppose before we go, it would be very remiss of us not to remember the late Brian Paterson and Elster Crawford, who unfortunately both died recently. Like, they would have been a very big part of your rallying too as well. Like, Brian was always there with his notepad and Elster with his camera. Yeah,
Brian was there at the end of every stage. It was great. The information that him and Liz put together that came out at the end of every stage was always very useful to not only to the navigators but to the team. They understood where you were and what you were doing and where you were at. And it was you know, very sad when I heard Brian had passed away. And lo and behold, now Andessler Crawford, who took the photographs behind the camera, and his photography was just amazing. And you know, when you appeared in the likes of Motoring News in England and the Irish Times and the Belfast Telegraph with Sammy Hamill and all of those people, you know, Andessler was a fantastic man also. So unfortunately, he passed away as well.
Now, as we start to wrap things up, Andrew, many a person has asked about how you and James, you know, the system and notes you used. How did you come about that system? And what exactly did it mean? And like James, the decibel levels was something to behold.
Well, the decibels was easy because I'm partially deaf from the explosion that I was involved in way back in 1977. But yeah, they were very unusual notes, but they all started back in the day. We were listening to Penty Auricula's notes with Ronan McNamee, who was my sponsor through Cuisine de France, as you know. But they had very unusual notes as well, but their numbers weren't as high as mine. But if you study them, they all had characteristics similar to that. And what they were doing at the time was they were taking angles. If you have a 360-degree angle, from 0 to 360, it's 36. If you drop the 0 on my notes and study the angle then, so one is absolutely straight as a die, and then every number thereafter. And once you get to 18, the road starts to come back on you.
Right.
It's starting to come back. Now, not necessarily visually coming back on you, but the road, if the car is sideways at maybe, I don't know, 120 mile an hour, sometimes you can go sideways. And that angle is the angle of that note at high speed. So, by the way, it's the first time I've shared this with anyone. But back in the day, we originated that with Brian Murphy and I creating a system similar to that didn't go as high as James and I brought it. But when he talked about 26, which is really a full-on hairpin, by the way, we never got to 27, but 26 was high enough. And James often said to me, Andrew, could we not change these notes back to notes that sound like everyone else's? And I couldn't do that because I visualized not only the stages, but I visualized the notes. Right. And the angle of the corner and the number would relate to the angle of life out there and in degrees, but I dropped the 0. So if you bring that back to 120 degrees and take the 0 off it, you've got a 12. You very easily realize what we were up to.
Yes.
And if you do the same with the jumps, depending on the degree of the jump, in other words, when we would take off and go to land, I would then understand the angle that I was likely to land at.
Right.
So the car could be on its nose, it could be landing on all 4 wheels, but the greater the number, the greater the nose dip. In other words, the angle of landing. And so that's where those numbers came from. We also added in left side, right side, and middle, or cut half, cut quarter. And cut quarter was simply the tire would have been off the road, the quarter width of the car. Cut half was right to the axle, midpoint. So all of these notes were all based on something. But one of the very unusual notes James has is back off.
Yes.
And that was, there's something very dangerous coming. And we also had mirage in there. In other words, it's not what it seems.
Okay.
You're coming up to a crest and you think the road is straight because the tree lines tell you the road is straight, when in actual fact it's not. It could be a hairpin bend.
Right.
And it's a mirage, back off, mirage. You know, you'd hear him saying that. So all of that detail went into the notes. They were very detailed, very confusing to everyone else in the rally world. I hope this helps to explain what they all meant. And there was one of the notes that we used quite often in the summertime, and it would be back off at the winds.
Right.
I remember James saying, "What, Andrew? What's the winds?" In other words, it sounds you were going to win something, but it was a wind bush.
Oh yes.
And coming from South Armagh, we had loads of wind bushes in the town. And any time I seen a wind bush coming up to a back corner, I'd say, "Back off at the winds." So that's how it all came about. And
well, hopefully that answers some of the questions.
Pardon?
Yeah, because there's quite a few people who've been messaging me since the first podcast to try and get to the bottom of these notes. So.
Well, I've shared some of it, but not all of it. And no doubt in mystery and in time, all the navigators of the world will want to find out what they're all about. But if you sit back and focus on it, as some professional navigators have done, they've said, Andrew, when we actually evaluate it, you really only have 12 notes
Right.
in the whole system, because you don't hear when I'm going from 12 to 14, there's never a 13.
Right. Yes.
12 to 16, there's never a 15. So there's never any odd numbers in my notes,
Right.
other than from 1 to 10.
Yes.
And there's never a 9.
Mm-hmm.
I'm never an 8, actually. So depending on the speed of the car, a lot of the numbers were actually dropped in between.
Right. Yes.
And I never used them, ever.
Yeah.
But it's so confusing when you think about it. You hear me saying 1, and we go right up to 26, and a lot of back-offs in between. But if you actually look at it, there's only actually 12 numbers I use.
Right, yes. Well, you know, the results speak...
That adds to the mystery.
Yes. The results obviously, you know, speak volumes for the success of the notes. You know, you look back at the years you and James spent together, like it's just phenomenal, the results.
Well, look, all of those notes started with Brian Murphy, and then moved on with James O'Brien, and James and I perfected them while there was a lot of noise and a lot of shouting. The shouting and the loud voice was really because I'm partially deaf, and it was just to inform me that it was a very serious potential accident ahead if I didn't back off. And you know, depending on the conditions, I would always leave it to the last. You know, if a navigator wants to slow down 1 second before you decide to slow down, it can be a nervous place to be. But at all times, James was under control of the whole situation.
Well, Andrew, I'd just like to personally now thank you very much for taking the time to spend with us in this podcast. It has been mind-blowing to just relive your career, and I really do appreciate you taking the time to share it with us all here now.
Well, you know what? It was a complete pleasure for me to be able to spend the time with you, Kevin. You've been great putting all of this information together. I know you've put many podcasts together for different international and national drivers and their teams. Keep doing it. Keep the good work going, because without the likes of the information, we don't get to know what's going on out there. So I want to thank you, and keep at it, because you're doing a great job, and look forward to seeing you in Donegal here soon.
Okay, appreciate that, my man. You take care of yourself, and we'll speak to you soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and goodbye.
Listen to this for commitment from the Donegal Rally 2006. Andrew and James flat out in the Mitsubishi WRC in the rain.
Oh no, here's Nesbitt or thingy.
Sometimes we forget just how fantastic Andrew and James were. Here's a few clips just to help to recall some memories.
Defense, double jump 24 into 3.
Just watch the Armagh driver's speed on these daunting jumps. The Subaru's approaching 130 miles an hour and Nesbitt isn't lifting one bit. The cross member is bent on the jump. Caution seems to have been thrown out the window. And co-driver James O'Brien realises the car still has to last for 2 more days.
And it's back off, don't get Andrew, please. Fine, my neck. Raz right side, double jump 26 to depth 26. Middle right 14 over jump 24. Up. Right 9 over double jump 22 to depth. Back off, square right 24 on the best left 24. Left 24.
We just try to up the pace a little bit, you know. So
has it worked?
So yeah, so far it took a half a minute back.
Confidence is now very high. He's launching a grand attack.
Middle and wide line right 20 times over crest. Left side right 18. And it's stop! Hairpin left 26 on crest 26. Stop!
There's no stopping Nesbitt in this form as he moves into the lead, taking 18 seconds off Eugene on this 12-mile test, much to the annoyance of co-driver James O'Brien's nerves.
Watch it, come back! Come back!
2002 has been Nesbitt's winning year. The professional amateur is now very professional at cracking open the champagne bottles. From the dominance of the Circuit of Ireland at Easter to Killarney in May, fending off the best of the British in Scotland in June, the Isle of Man in July, and landing his first Ulster victory in Belfast in August. The Armagh man has been guided by James O'Brien to the victor's ramp.
Andrew and James, congratulations. How are you feeling?
Absolutely over the moon. Fantastic race, fantastic rally, and a fantastic championship.
James, it must be nice being back out around Mill Street again yesterday.
It's fantastic to win at home again. It really was. And it's been a fairy tale year. Not just, it's great to win at home, but for me to go to the Isle of Man and particularly go to Scotland and for the for not alone for us to win, but for the Irish competitors to fill 6 of the top 7 places really speaks volumes for Irish rallying.
That was Andrew Nesbitt and myself, Kevin Glendinning, talking rally. I've been overwhelmed by the response to the previous 2 podcasts of my conversation with Andrew, and I'd just like to thank each and every one of you for the downloads, your kind comments, your likes and your shares. So if you could continue to do that, please, and if you're listening to Apple Podcast, can you please rate the podcast? That would be gratefully appreciated. Until the next time, take care and speak soon. Bye-bye.